Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing to my channel for those of you that have already done that. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. I love doing these videos and I really appreciate all the support that I get. I've been getting some really good feedback lately on some of the videos I've been doing and the information I've been providing. And if it helps you guys catch more fish, it makes this all worthwhile. So, one of the questions that I did just receive had to do with practice and how I went about practicing for a major event on a lake that I've never been to, or even a lake that I've been to in the past, but it's been several years. And this is kind of a hot button topic right now because the Major League Fishing Pro Circuit, which I am fishing next year, just reduced the amount of practice days from 3 days to 2 days. And that's a pretty big change. I've had a lot of tournaments in the past where, the first 2 days of practice were a big struggle. I go out on the third day and I find something that really pays off with a really good tournament. And I'm also the type of guy that likes to kind of try to look for a home run here and there. And that means, I might waste a day doing something that I know is probably not going to pay off, but if it does, it can be really good. And I love finding those little things like that, because those are the patterns or the locations that you're going to have to yourself most likely. And when it pays off, it's really worth it. But with only 2 days of practice this year, I really don't know if I can afford to gamble that much when it comes to practice. Maybe on some of the fisheries I've been to before, I might try to look for some off the wall stuff, but it's going to be a little bit different. And this is my 11th year now fishing at the professional level. I feel pretty comfortable with 2 days, but I can tell you, if I were a rookie coming in right now, I'd be a little bit more concerned. Our information rule is pretty much as strict as anything that's been out there. I mean, we haven't been able to get information since November, and you won't be able to get information throughout the season, which for me, I'm all about that. I really don't get any information. For me to trust the information I was getting, it would have to be from somebody I truly trust. And at this point, like, all the good fishermen that I fish with or really trust are pretty much up in the Wisconsin area, and I don't have those sources down south. It's just, and I really don't talk to people down south. So for me, that's not going to be a big issue. But for some of the rookies coming in, they potentially could struggle because it's a lot less practice, and they're not going to have the information that they maybe would have been able to get before. So with respect to my practice, I definitely think that you can really put a huge amount of emphasis on practice. I mean, practice is one of those things that can lead you to winning the tournament. I mean, it's not something to take lightly, in my opinion. So I practice from sun up to sundown. I mean, it's a full day on the water. And I take it seriously. I mean, I really try to cover a lot of water while I'm out there. So what my approach is this. Before I get to a body of water, I try to do a decent amount of research on that body of water so that I'm familiar with it when I get there. I like to know what type of lake it's going to be, how it's going to roughly lay out, what it's going to look like. So when I get there, I'm not blown away by it being something different than what I thought it was going to look like. I like to know where the boat ramps are. I like to know where everything is in relation to where I'm staying for that week. With that information, I like to try to identify the community areas on the lake. What are the areas that consistently produce winning bags of fish, or just produce a lot of fish? Because a lot of these lakes we go to have a lot of dead water. There really is. And it seems like there are areas that consistently produce winning bags of fish, or just really good quality bags of fish. So I want to know where those areas are. And then when I get to the tournament site itself, I can't say that I'm I'm concentrating on those areas, but I kind of use those areas as fallbacks. If I know that they're good in general, then those are the types of areas I can go to in the tournament, maybe without having even fished, and figure them out, having the confidence that I know I'm in a good area. But so once I do the research before I get to the lake, the next thing I want to do is kind of identify what the main pattern is for that time of year. So, if it's Kentucky Lake in May or June, ledge fishing is going to dominate, and that's what I try to essablish everywhere we go, so that I have a good idea as to, will this be a deep fishery, or will it be a shallow fishery? Is it a brush pile lake? That type of stuff. Just general information. So then once I get to the body of water, then it's more about fishing my strengths and trying to capitalize on my strengths while fishing those strategies that I know win tournaments. So my biggest weakness, in my opinion, is ledge fishing, deep water ledge fishing. I've gotten much better at it, but it's one of those things that unless you grow up on the TVA lakes, it takes a little bit of learning. Establishing my fishing career up here in the north, it's a lot more shallow water fishing. You might be smallmouth fishing deep, but that's kind of a different thing in my opinion. So I've really gotten better at ledge fishing, but in general, if I had one weakness, I'd say it's my just overall deep water fishing. So, I will do it. I don't have any issues doing it, but when I get to a fishery, I try to concentrate on my strengths. And even if that means I'm fishing deep, I want to be using baits that I feel super comfortable with, techniques that I feel super comfortable with, so that I'm trying to give myself every advantage that I can while I'm fishing that deep water. I'll usually always try to explore a shallow water bite too, just to see if I can work in something like that. The one thing I'll say with shallow water fishing, especially if it's going to be a deep water tournament, is the shallow bite's usually not nearly as reliable, and it's not you're not going to find schools of fish. So, if you're practicing, you don't want to catch those shallow fish. You're just kind of trying to identify where they live, because a lot of times those fish will stay in that area. If you see a big one cruising, or you get a good blow up, if you go back in that area in the tournament, there's a good chance you'll catch it, as long as you didn't catch it in practice. So, I'll try to fish my strengths with the main pattern that's going on that lake for that time of the year. And then, I consider myself a sampler. When it comes to practicing, I call myself a sampler. And what I mean by that is I like to do a little bit of everything. I have a ton of rods out. I will hit deep, shallow, in between, docks, rocks, every type of cover that I can try to hit, or that I see, I'll pull in and hit it quick, just to try to establish a pattern within that that main pattern that's going on in the lake. So, what I mean by that is, if it's going back to the ledge tournament, if it's a ledge tournament, I'll try to hit all kinds of different ledges, main river, creeks, way in the backs of creeks, humps, high spots, shell bars, all kinds of different types of ledge fishing. And I'll try to establish a pattern, like, okay, yeah, I'm getting most of my bites in 12 foot of water that are, on main creek arms flowing into the main river channel, but they're not out on the main river channel yet. That type of stuff. So I'm a sampler, but keep in mind, what I'm sampling are specific targets. And I can't stress this enough. I think for the majority of anglers out there, when you only have a couple of days of practice and you're trying to break down a lake, you want to make sure that your bait is where the fish live as much as possible throughout the day. So you want to fish specific targets. That's one of the things I've made a change in my career. My first 3 years on tour, where I finished in the middle of the pack, nothing special. One of the biggest things I've changed is I try to fish specific targets. And what I mean by that is, if I'm going down a bank and there's a laydown, and I catch a fish from the laydown, and I see another laydown way up the bank, instead of fishing down that bank to get to that next laydown, it's better just to go to that next laydown. It's better to hit those specific targets, that are high percentage spots that'll basically mean you're fishing areas that are more likely to have fish in them versus kind of wasting your time working up to that next spot. Now, that doesn't mean between those two laydowns there wasn't a stump or a rock or something that wasn't visible that you would have found otherwise. But when it comes to making sure that you're spending your day efficiently, you only get 8 hours. You want to make sure you hit as many specific targets as possible. So in practice, that's one of the things that I'll do. I'll mark every target that I can that I think could be what I consider a one-hitter. You pull in there, you make a cast, you catch a fish. And if you catch one, that was the whole plan behind it. Maybe there's two there, that's even better. But the whole goal is you're swinging in, hitting targets as fast as you can. And that, that's not just shallow water fishing. It's deep water fishing too. If it's brush piles, you want to make sure you're casting to the brush pile versus just fishing a point. If there's a high percentage item on that structure you're fishing, a brush pile, a boulder, a rock seam, a transition zone, that's most likely where you're going to catch your fish. Are there fish roaming around elsewhere? Absolutely there are. But it's going to take you more time to fish that area thoroughly to come in contact with that one fish or one extra fish. And you might have been able to hit 3 or 4 other spots and catch fish pretty quickly on those. So, that's kind of how I approach practice. I'm really trying to locate as many high percentage spots as I can in areas that are generally known to be better. And at the same time that line up with what that seasonal pattern is. And, I feel like if you can find high percentage spots that fall in line with those 2 other categories, the main areas of the lake, as well as the main patterns, seasonal patterns, that you're going to put yourself in contact with a lot of fish. And it's paid off great. The one issue I will say with that is a lot of times you're fishing for isolated fish, and those spots may replenish from day to day, which is great. But a lot of times you're not going to find that school of fish, which seems like to win the tournaments, you need to find those, that spot. You need to find the winning spot. And I'm not saying you can't win with this pattern. I do very well with it. I've had my shots at winning. It's just one of those things where I feel like if you spend more time looking for schools of fish, that's how you win. But I also feel like that's how a lot of times you strike out, because it's really hard to find that needle in the haystack. So I hope that answers the question as to how I go about practice. The last thing I'll add to it is you really want to keep an open mind while you're on the water. Don't force any of these patterns that are supposed to be happening, because sometimes they're just not going to happen. Sometimes they're off. The best thing to do is just use your senses while you're out there. And if you think you need to go try something, go try it. Give it 15 minutes. If it doesn't work, move on to something else. That was one of the things I know Kevin Van Dam has talked about in the past. Don't spend much more than 15 minutes in a spot. If you spend 15 minutes there and you haven't had a bite, you probably should just move. And that's another good piece of advice to adapt for your practice. So thanks for watching, guys. Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot more videos coming out. We're trying to do them every day now. And thanks for watching.